My name is Cadence. I work the closing shift at a small dive bar in the quieter part of town. Our little bar sits right off the highway, with a back entrance that anyone in town can use. It's nothing fancy. A dimly lit place where everyone knows each other by name, and a battered jukebox keeps spinning the same classic rock tunes night after night. Most of our customers are local truckers passing through, or the occasional lost tourist in need of a stiff drink. I enjoy the routine, even if it's predictable. The tips are decent, and over time I've learned how to handle every kind of patron, from the friendly talkers and flirtatious regulars to the silent drinkers who just want to be left alone. Weeknights are slow, but they also mean I work alone. Without a bar back or coworkers around, it sometimes gets lonely, so I stay extra vigilant. After all, even a quiet night can turn into a bar brawl in a place like this. One Tuesday night, just after 1 a.m., the door creaked open and in walked a man who immediately caught my eye. He looked to be in his late 40s but was dressed with a refined taste. A black turtleneck neatly tucked under a sleek black trench coat. His clean-cut appearance, impeccable posture, and calm, measured steps gave him an aura of quiet sophistication, the kind that made you think of boardrooms and big money rather than a rundown bar. He paused to take in the scene before striding over to the bar and taking a seat. As I poured him a top-shelf drink, he flashed a friendly smile and asked, "Do you like working here?" It was a simple enough question, and I replied honestly with a smile, "Yeah, I do." I even tossed in a light-hearted joke about the life of a bartender, though I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more behind his smooth tone than just casual conversation. After chatting for a few minutes about everyday things, he leaned in and asked if I'd ever thought about doing something bigger with my life. I returned my standard bartender grin and said I was happy where I was. He nodded thoughtfully, took a slow sip of his drink, and then, almost as if it were an afterthought, asked, "What time do you get off?" The question hung in the air like a subtle invitation. Before I could fully process it, he placed a crisp $100 bill gently on the bar, and with no further word, drained his drink and walked out into the night. I didn't see him again for nearly a week. Then one slow, lonely night as I was closing up, the door swung open once more. There he was, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman accompanied him. I hadn't seen her before, and something about her immediately struck me as off. She was in her mid-30s and dressed in a trendy, almost overly fashionable style that clashed with the rough-and-tumble vibe of our bar. Everything about her, the way she smiled, the way she casually leaned against the bar as if we were already friends, seemed calculated. Her first words weren't a greeting or a drink order. Instead, she offered a compliment. "You're so pretty." As she said it, her fingers brushed against my arm, lingering just a moment too long. I laughed and thanked her, but a chill ran down my spine. The man, who had been so talkative on his previous visit, remained silent this time, watching us both carefully. The conversation soon turned from pleasantries to probing questions. She asked how long I'd been working there, my age, and a series of other personal details. I answered in short, polite sentences, growing increasingly uneasy as it became clear that her interest wasn't purely friendly. At one point, she exchanged a silent, knowing glance with the man before leaning in to reveal something unexpected. She claimed to run an exclusive event club and hinted that I could earn a handsome sum, 10 grand for a weekend gig. Her tone was calm, almost conspiratorial, as she painted a picture of fun, safe, and exclusive work that seemed too good to be true. Trying to keep the situation light, I forced a laugh and told her it sounded too good to be real. Sensing my hesitation, she smoothly shifted the conversation. "You should step outside for a second," she said. "There's someone who can explain it better." My heart began to race. I wasn't interested in any more of these mysterious propositions, but before I could respond, a group of regular customers walked in, their laughter filling the room. In that moment, her friendly mask slipped. A brief flicker of annoyance passed over her face as she exchanged a quick look with the man. Without another word, They left together into the night. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. I tried to push the odd encounter to the back of my mind, but one particular night made it impossible. After closing up, while I was tidying behind the bar, I noticed a car parked across the street. Its engine was off, and it sat in an almost deliberate stillness. I tried to dismiss it as nothing more than a forgotten vehicle, but as I walked to my car, I couldn't help but feel that I was being watched. Every turn I took, that same car remained a safe distance behind me, always just close enough to be suspicious, yet far enough to avoid drawing attention. My pulse pounded as I navigated back onto a side street, desperate to lose it. But no matter what route I took, the car followed. Anxiety surged, and with trembling hands, I steered my car into the parking lot of a nearby police station. I sat there for a long, tense moment, checking my mirrors. Finally, my boss arrived, and together we reviewed the security footage from the bar. What we saw made my skin crawl. Moments before the woman had left during that earlier visit, the cameras had captured two masked figures crouching near the front door, lurking just outside. There was also a person at the back, repeatedly pounding on the door as if trying to force his way in. My boss managed to record the license plate of the van they used as they sped away. Later, the police confirmed that the plate was unregistered, a small detail that made the whole ordeal even more disturbing. Though nothing overtly criminal had happened that night, the incident left me deeply unsettled. My boss, concerned for my safety, decided that I would never work a night shift alone again. Even with extra security measures in place, I still feel a lingering fear every time I step behind the bar at closing. I often lie awake wondering how these strangers had known my schedule so well and what might have happened if I'd reacted differently. That night changed everything for me. It taught me that even in the most familiar routines, danger can lurk in the shadows, waiting, watching, and ready to disrupt the calm of everyday life in an instant. Story number 2. I used to work the night shift at a small gas station, an SLC convenience store tucked away off a quiet stretch of highway. I say used to, because after what happened a few months ago, I'll never set foot on a night shift again. Most nights were slow. After restocking shelves and wiping down counters, I'd find myself scrolling on my phone while the neon sign flickered its tired glow. It was well past 2:30 in the morning, and even the usual truckers had long since passed by. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just the rows of fuel pumps, a lonely road, and a dark line of trees stretching into the distance. The cold air was so crisp you could see your breath, and the moisture hanging in the air made everything look a bit hazy. One night, as I stepped outside for some fresh air, I noticed something odd. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement near one of the pumps. I whipped my head around and saw a man standing there. He was wearing a dark red hoodie with the hood pulled up, and his hands were buried in his pockets. There was no car near him. He wasn't fueling up. Instead, he was standing with his body half turned toward the store, as if he were watching me. At first, I figured maybe he was waiting for someone, but the way he moved, almost shuffling in a slow circular pattern, set off alarm bells in my mind. I stepped back into the store, but I kept my eyes fixed on him through the glass door. I hoped someone might drive up and pick him up, but after a few minutes, he began walking toward the entrance. His steps were slow at first, then suddenly he pushed open the door as if he'd made up his mind in an instant. At the counter, he didn't greet me warmly or ask politely for help. Instead, he just stared at me for a moment, as if sizing me up, and then mumbled in a rushed, rehearsed tone that his car had broken down just before the pumps. "I just need a jump, or maybe a little gas to get me to the next town," he said. I was taken aback. His story was so half-hearted and unbelievable that I couldn't help but think it was a load of nonsense. I offered to call a tow truck instead, but he quickly shook his head, insisting he only needed a flashlight and a hand checking under the hood. Something about the way he spoke, and the way his eyes never left mine, made me suspicious. I asked him where his car was parked, and he pointed to the monitor behind me. I turned to look, and to my surprise, there was indeed a car parked outside, right near the highway entrance. I thought, oh no, I would have noticed that car when I was outside. Then I saw it, the slightest movement near the car's back bumper, like someone crouching just out of view. A cold wave of dread washed over me. I forced a casual smile and told him I'd be right back, explaining that I needed to grab my phone from the back office. The moment I was out of his direct sight, I slammed my hand onto the emergency panic button hidden under the counter. The alarm blared loudly throughout the store, screeching through the silence. I braced myself, expecting him to lunge at me, but instead, something even more unsettling happened. His tense, nervous energy vanished. He stopped fidgeting, stopped the hurried shifting of his weight, and then, almost as if amused, he offered a slow, knowing grin. There was no fear in his smile, just a calm, almost mocking certainty, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Before I could react, in one fluid motion, he turned and bolted out of the store. I dashed to the surveillance monitors just in time to see him, and another shadowy figure that had appeared behind him, taking off. They didn't run toward the parked car. Instead, they disappeared into the dark woods behind the station. I watched in disbelief as the car remained, its engine silent and headlights off, abandoned in the cold night. When the police finally arrived, everything was exactly as I had seen. The car was still there, unmoving, while the two men had vanished without a trace. The officers searched the area for any footprints or signs of escape, but there was nothing. Then one of the officers pointed out a small disturbing detail. The front passenger door of the car was open. That meant there had been a third person inside all along, a detail that deepened the mystery and my sense of dread. Still. A few days later, the police followed up with me. They had the car towed and checked its plates. It turned out the vehicle had been reported stolen nearly a week earlier from over 100 miles away. No one had come forward to claim it. There were no reports of missing persons or any other crimes linked to it. Just an abandoned car left as an enigma in the middle of nowhere. Even now, I can't understand why convenience stores like ours seem to attract such unsettling encounters. I'm haunted by the memory of that night, the sight of those mysterious figures and the eerie calm in his smile. I know one thing for certain. I will never work another night shift again. Thanks for listening, good night, and have a restful sleep.